Come on. There we go. There we go. Okay. Cool. Pop out the chat. Bring that down there and excuse me, I think we're all ready to go. Howdy, folks. I hope you're doing well this Sunday morning. At least it's Sunday here. Let's see here. Good morning from Harlingen, in the lower Rio Grande Valley of Texas. Really hoping to get to TMX this summer. Me too. Nightfire Gaming, how you doing? Fungazi, how you doing? Morning from Mesa, Arizona. Hello from Florida. Good day from South Ontario. Clearwater, Florida. VJ Morph, how you doing? Robert Dean. Looks like I get to watch while reorganizing my painting desk today. Delaware. I also wish I was reorganizing my painting desk today, but I am not. I told my Irish wife that I was waiting for the stream to start. She asked, is that the fellow with the beard and the voice? Well, you know, yes, to both. I do have a voice and I have a beard. But say hello to your wife for me. JP Got Rockets, how you doing? John Ashley Smith, howdy. Hello from West Bend. Nice. It's West Bend, Wisconsin, by the way. South Florida, Newark, New York. I thought it was Newark, New Jersey. Maybe there's two of them. Or I'm just wrong. That happens a lot too. Morning from sunny Salt Lake City. I was in your city twice in the last week, but really just the airport. On my way to Reno for the thing. Good morning from Nova. I'll be in Nova in the end of August into early September for the Nova Open. Good morning from dreary Portland. You and Jeremy have sold me on Mork Borg. Nice. The books are in the mail. Currently making some minis, gross and weird looking. Need to beef up my kit bashing supplies. Yeah, that's that stuff is pretty cool. I'm really looking forward to, I think, the digital release of The Last War. So if you don't know what we're talking about here, Mork Borg is a role-playing game. It's like super black metal fantasy kind of, you know, weird. And they have this sort of license so that people can make stuff for it very easily and all that kind of stuff. And a person named Kevin made a miniature skirmish game based off of Mork Borg that was called Forbidden Psalm. It came out several years ago. If you want to see videos about it, I would definitely check Guerrilla Miniature Games, Ash Barker's channel. He's done a bunch of battle reports, and it's really fun and cool. It's a fun little 5-person skirmish game that you can play solo or co-op and stuff like that. It's got a really interesting kind of sense of humor to it, but it's not jokey, you know what I mean? But yeah, it's cool. Well, that same creator has now produced a game based off of Forbidden Psalm, which is kind of based off of Mork Borg, but this new one is like alternate World War I, and it's called The Last War, and there are haunted tanks and sentient mustard gas clouds, and there's trench maggots and stuff like that. And so, and it's played on a 2x2 board, and you get to kind of kit bash the stuff that, you know, really. So there was a Kickstarter. The Kickstarter's finished, and the printed versions will be coming sometime later this year, but the PDFs will be available very soon. I'm really looking forward to it because I want to start making some models. I actually picked up some models this weekend from Wargames Atlantic that are German World War I models that I think I can do some fun kit bashing with. Lots of gas masks, of course, you know. And you don't have to paint faces. It's actually quite nice. Hi from Southampton, England, rainy Spain, New Mexico, damp Ontario. It's lovely and sunny here today. It's going to be mid-50s. Hello from Dublin. How you doing? Morning from the Panhandle of Florida, France. Let's see here. So pumped to go to my first AdeptiCon next week. Well, it's not my first AdeptiCon, certainly, but I am definitely pumped to go to AdeptiCon. I don't know that I will be able to sleep much between now and then because I have so much to get done since I've just got back, not yesterday, but the day before from Reno. These are two. I think next year Reno is in April, which would be spectacular, honestly. New mic is sounding good. Hey, Adam. Well, thank you very much, VJ Morph. I appreciate it. It also lights up when I talk. I can make it do other things, but I just decided to make it do that. You can change the colors. It's crazy. There's multiple new works. Well, there you go. That explains that. Let's see. Harlingen is pronounced like carcinogen. So it's Harlingen? Ah, okay. Have you ever heard of Raven Feast? Yes, I have. It's streamlined, historical skirmish game. You probably like it. It's also free, by the way. It's made by the folks, I believe it's made by the folks from Little Wars TV. And it is designed to be a good kind of gateway entry into historical gaming. It's a free rule set. It's called Raven's Feast, which I believe is actually all one word. And it's Vikings, basically fighting Vikings and stuff like that. I've not played it, but I have definitely, they sent me a copy of the PDF sometime just before launch or just after, I forget exactly, just to take a look at. And it's nicely done, I think. Had the hottest dice of my life in last night's Castlands game. It was scary. Ended up losing in the end, but it was a wicked game. Nice. Those are always the fun ones. Jonesboro, New Brunswick, Romania, Baton Rouge, Connecticut, Normandy, Germany. Checking in from England. Glorious weather today. Nice. Question for pro painters at AdeptiCon. Where do you find your inspiration? So that's not bad. Yeah. Okay. Let's just get this started right away if we can. I made a video back in 2017 where I talked to 7 different painters and I asked them all the same 6 questions. And I kind of want to redo that this year. Initially, my thought was, I'll just ask the same painters, but very likely at least a couple of them that I know aren't going to be there. So I thought, well, so then I've got this idea now of taking the same questions, which I have on this notepad open right here. So these are the questions I asked. If you could redo your journey from a beginning painter, what would you do differently? Do high quality paints and brushes really help you when learning as a beginner? What helped you increase your skill, working in high volume quickly or working slowly on a few models to get the highest quality? How important should it be? How important should it be to a beginning painter to understand color theory? Is there a common piece of advice aimed at beginning painters that you think is completely wrong? Now, those first 5 questions were all questions I got from my Patreon folks. I asked them back in 2017 about this, and those are the questions that I picked. And then I added this last one, which was, how many times have you accidentally drank your paint water or cleaned your brush in your drink? Which, so it was a popular video. People dug it. And so I'm thinking about using those same questions again, but asking different painters this time. But I also want to ask just a bunch of other painters, but I don't know how many videos I want to try to make out of this. So I have those questions, but those are the ones I did last time. So I'm looking for new questions. So if you've got a question that you think would be useful, and I'm still thinking about, I don't know exactly. Like my first thought was like, do I want to aim towards beginners again? This channel is generally aimed towards beginners. That's trying to get people into the hobby. So the question becomes then, do I want to do another thing like that? And I'm not exactly sure what other questions to ask painters. So if you've got a question to ask pro painters that's not too crazy long, if you just put the word question at the beginning of the comment here in the comments, live stream thingy, and then I can go back and look at them later. But yeah, I appreciate that. JP Got Rockets letting me, reminding me to get started on that stuff, because that's what I want to do. It's been 2 years of no AdeptiCon, so I'm really looking forward to going back, and I do want to do some interviews with some folks. And so, yeah, that's what I'm looking for today as far as the questions are concerned. Good morning from Mount Dora, windy Henderson, Nevada. I was just in Reno, Nevada. There's a Delaware one, there's a New Jersey one, and in England, there's lots of new works. Wow, there you go. Let's see. Question for you and pro painters. What paints and equipment do you haul with you? How do you transport it? What do you expect to be already at the con? Gotcha. Okay. Have you ever played Infinity? I've done 3 different demos of Infinity, and one of them actually was Sam taught me, I think, the most recent time. And it's just never quite stuck with me. There's something about the rules that don't settle properly with me. They're not bad. Obviously, people like the game and stuff like that. It's just sometimes you find a rule set that just doesn't, I don't know, it just doesn't jive. I don't think that's the right word, but yeah, it's weird. Let's see. Hi from Brazil. How you doing? Let's see here. Greetings from southern Germany, building Scarab Terminators. Nice. I would ask the pro painters whether they get stuck on some projects and end up leaving those projects to percolate for a while, or marinate perhaps, and then work on other things until a flash of inspiration. I can see that's not bad. Yeah. Launching into the main content right away. I know it's weird. I know. Question for pro painters: what technique, when you learned it, was a game changer for you? That's not a bad question. Yep. And again, I'm probably going to I'm going to go through these and probably pick, I don't know, again, maybe like 6 roughly or something like that. Ask as many of the same painters too. Their perspectives may have changed or evolved. I was thinking about that, but I was also thinking about trying to ask several of those same painters maybe different questions. But there was a part of me that was like, what if I asked all those same painters the same questions to see if their answers have changed in more than 2 years. It's been 2 years since AdeptiCon, but that video is 2017, so that's quite some time ago. It's like 5 years ago or whatever. If you ask Sam a question, it needs to be, should you paint rainbows on your minis? Yeah, I could see that. What's the next best step after Zenithal highlight? I mean, in my opinion, it's just generally either some sort of transparent paint, like start blocking out colors in contrasts or speed paints or glazes or even washes. With all the 3D sculpts available, what would you as a painter look for most in a model? Interesting. It's not bad. Yeah. What music do you listen to when wanting to get inspired? Nice. Good morning from Atlanta. How's the Beacon mic so far? So far, pretty good. I've had to go back in and tweak it a little bit. There's a video by a guy named Harris Heller. I think his channel, he's got 2 channels on YouTube. There's one that's just Harris Heller, and the other one is Alpha Gaming, I believe. And he's got a pretty long video on Alpha Gaming about how to properly tweak the mic to get it to sound the best, and I just haven't had the time yet. So we'll see how that goes. Do you have a favorite storage system method for your paints? That's not bad, yeah. What skill would you most focus on if you started again as a beginner? I kind of asked that, I think. Well, not exactly. If you could redo your journey from beginning painting, which would you do differently? Yeah, I guess that's technically different, yeah. Let's see here. How important is a paintbrush quality? I did ask that one. Do high quality paints and brushes really help when you're learning as a beginner? So we've got that one kind of covered from the previous video. How many pieces do you generally paint for a competition, and how do you choose which one to take to the competition? Interesting, yeah. I know this year's, what do you call it? The Golden Demon, which is, so AdeptiCon used to have this, there used to be this painting competition called Crystal Brush, which was technically Cool Mini or Not, ran the show, sponsored the whole deal. It was all their thing. 2019 was the last Crystal Brush. Cool Mini or Not was like, yeah, we're not doing that anymore. So 2020 was going to be the first, the return of Golden Demon to the United States, because they used to have the Golden Demon in the United States. They've also got one over in England, and they used to have them all over the place. Excuse me. Anyway, so 2020 was going to be the first Golden Demon. That obviously didn't happen. 2021. So 2022, people are going to be rolling into AdeptiCon with stuff that, like, there are going to be probably plenty of painters who have basically have an entry for every single possible category because they've had 3 years now to do it. So this Crystal Brush, this Golden Demon is going to be, I believe the children say off the chain. I'm pretty sure is what it is. So yeah, it'll be pretty cool. Let's see here. What changes do you hope to see in the painting hobby or community in the next few years? That's not bad. That's not bad. Is it worth it to learn painting classic and contrast methods, or just one? Hello from Vegas. You and Sam are an inspiration to Warcry enthusiasts everywhere. Well, there's maybe about 10,000 of us then, evidently, because the video on Friday didn't get many views, where we talked about how to, like, strategies as a beginner when you're building your first warbands for Warcry, which we thought was a good topic, but evidently not. So there's that. Was display painting the beginning of your paint journey, or did you start it with army painting? Well, that's, yeah. The only conceivable thing I could see changing about my own hobby journey is to not bought an Aztec airbrush when I broke my Iwata. Well, yeah. Is there a painting trend you're sick of seeing? Oh, going negative, but you know. What do you think is the most overlooked but possibly earliest or easiest technique to learn? That's a good question. Yeah, absolutely. Was there any hobby revelations at your recent trip? Is that a question for me? That might be a question for me. Let's see. I talked a little bit with the CEO of a company called SioCast, S-I-O-Cast, C-A-S-T. And SioCast is this company that makes this new machine. So normally when you have a plastic miniatures have to be made in steel or aluminum molds. Aluminum is cheaper, but steel is the Games Workshop stuff's made in steel molds. Steel molds cost $10,000 to $50,000 to make, and they're very fancy, and you have to have a bunch of money right up front. Metal models or resin models don't cost nearly that much to make, but the price of metal has been going up and up and up and up, and even resin has been going up. Plastics, yeah, somewhat here and there. Obviously, they're based off the price of oil or whatever. But generally, once you spend all that money on the mold, then it's just pennies to put out, sprues. Well, this company out of Spain has invented this new machine. It's about a little bit smaller than the fridge in your kitchen, probably. That will allow you to injection mold plastic into rubber molds. Usually, metal miniatures and resin miniatures are done in what's known as galvanized rubber molds. But if you were to try to inject normal hot plastic into that, it wouldn't work. Well, this new machine using this particular type of thermoplastic, which is quite nice and getting very close to being nearly, the same type of stuff that Games Workshop has, or, whatever that type of plastic. Yeah. And those molds cost about $200 instead of $10,000 to $50,000. So I've talked about this a little bit. Coming back from Gen Con last year, I had a bunch of miniatures, like cyberpunk miniatures that I got from Monster Fight Club. They're one of the earliest kind of gaming companies that's gotten into the SioCast thing. So actually I bumped into the president of Monster Fight Club, and he was having, we were waiting to be seated at this restaurant. And so I was talking to him, because I've known him for a number of years, and he introduced me to, I think his name is either Farron or Ferran. I didn't catch it. It was very loud. And it's on his business card, and I don't know how to pronounce it particularly, but he's from Spain, and he's the CEO of SioCast. He gave me a couple of sample models and stuff to take a look at and everything. And so we're going to talk probably a little bit more at AdeptiCon, because they've got a booth there. So that, to me, for the small companies, is really going to be a game changer. When small companies can afford to do plastic, that's going to be a big deal. Absolutely. So that's, I think, a big thing that's coming. I mean, it's already started, even Infinity, like Corvus Belli is starting to use some SioCast, and a lot of other companies are doing it too. So yeah, it's going to become a thing, I think. Let's see here. Do pro painters lurk around Facebook groups? Do they ever post questions, comments under a different pseudonym? What would be a tip or technique that you'd like to pass on that nobody ever seems to discuss on YouTube or in classes and tutorials? Interesting. Let's see. After watching you for a few years, I finally got an airbrush, but I don't know what matte varnish to use. Is there anything different I should do to clean the airbrush afterwards? There's nothing different to clean. Like when I use the matte varnish that I use, I just clean it normally like I would with paint. There's no difference, at least for me. Managed to pick up the 2021 Tome of Champions over the weekend. Pretty keen to get all my Underworlds warbands being useful again. Yes, I agree. Let's see here. Is there an aesthetic that you wish would get explored more? That's kind of interesting. I have two friends who want to try Warhammer 40K, but I'm afraid that introducing them to the game will put them off. I'm thinking about one-page rules, skirmish, firefight. What's your opinions? I think that generally it is easier to get people into skirmish games. Now, if they are people that are like, the only thing I've ever heard of is this Warhammer 40,000, and that's the only thing I want to try out, well, but if you're like, well, that's cool, but if you don't want to spend all of your money, or if you don't want to spend all of your time building and painting, and you only want to spend some of your money and time building and painting or whatever, then maybe we try this. You can still use those models, You want to, you can cherry pick the best models that you think are cool, and then we'll put them into this game and then play that, and it's the best of both worlds. That may be a good, pitch, honestly. What are you expecting from GW Preview Wednesday night? Marketing speak, I don't know. Some new codex, probably. I have no idea. Nothing fancy, frankly. I don't expect them to drop a new game. I have a suspicion they're just going to be like, oh, we got new models coming out. And we're all going to be like, okay, I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't believe, you know what I'd like to see? I'd like to see them go, hey, we're bringing back Space Hulk again. That's what I'd like to see. My belief is that this summer, when I decide to paint my Space Hulk on Twitch, which I'm planning on doing, I've got to finish up the warband I'm working on now, which is Skaven, and then I'm going to do some Khorne. A Khorne warband for Warcry, and then after that, I'm planning on painting my 2009 version of Space Hulk. And my belief is, as soon as I get done, they'll release a new version. They'll have all new sculpts too, and that'll be like, okay, cool. So yeah, but that'd be cool if they would mention it a little bit earlier. That'd be neat. I would love to dry paint, but it's taking quite a while for my artist opus set to arrive. Oh, a dry brush. Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah. At least I think that's what you're talking about. I generally use makeup brushes that I get from the dollar store, and they work out pretty cool. Let's see here. Plan on putting on Friday's videos I was driving. I don't play Warcry, though. Well, there you go. The meta in my area's kill team seems like the majority either play Age of Sigmar or kill team, but no Warcry. Well, whoops, everything scrolled. Maybe the next Snarling Badger game will have some minis, or not. It won't. That's for sure. Yeah, no, for us, we want to just make books. We just want to make the rule set. You buy the rule set, use models you already have, use models you've always wanted to try, use models that you're going to 3D print, but we don't particularly, like at some point, maybe will we make some STLs? If we could actually convince a sculptor that was good to work with us, sure, I suppose, but we've not had any luck with that in the past. Well, we haven't tried. I have tried about a year and a half ago to talk to a bunch of different sculptors that I really admired their work, and they were all like, yeah, I'm super busy because I have my own Patreon and I'm making boatloads of cash, and that's great, and I'm glad for them. I really am. And I was planning on paying them. This was not like a, hey, I'll give you exposure. I mean, people die from exposure. That's not a good payment. It's like in the winter or something like that. So yeah, I don't know. So yeah, that's where that's at. Do you think any of the major mini companies will make STLs available? Well, I could see Warlord doing that for specific things, maybe. What miniature-related product is the biggest waste of money? Interesting. Let's see. Isn't Old World supposed to come out soon? I don't know. I mean, there was talk of it a while back, and they were saying it was going to take probably at least 4 years, since time is a flat circle. I don't remember how long ago that was. I would think it was before the pandemic, and the pandemic's been going on for 28 years now, it seems, so I would assume it's soon. I don't know. I have no idea. Let's see here. Morning from Central California. Really enjoyed your new Why I Like It series. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Played a game of Space Weirdos earlier this week and loved it. Currently painting some Van Sars in a desert camo scheme. Ooh, that sounds fun. Those big coats, I could see that you doing well. Not bad. Because it's GW, they will announce a new Primaris Lieutenant. Probably. That's a good point. I mean, you're not going to lose money betting on something like that, I wouldn't think. Maybe they'll officially announce the Summer of Skaven. That'd be a itchy summer. But yeah, counting on you to finish painting Space Hulk to complete the ritual. You can't paint without pain. I can understand that. Yeah. For the sci-fi game you are working on, what type of minis will you be leaning towards? Will they be humanoid, non-humanoid? I mean, you're going to have a lot of choices. You could do all kinds of different things. There's a lot of, you could have biped, it's going to be basically humans and aliens or anything in between. I mean, that's a wide range, I know, but you'll have lots of choices, honestly. People don't die from exposure here, but they might get a fine. Well, yeah, sure. Let's see here. Questions for a pro painter. What type of model/miniature people should paint on first? Oh, I see. What type of model/miniature should people paint on first? Or people should... yeah, I get where you're going. How often do you change your paint water? Not very often, if you're asking me. I probably should do it more frequently, but I do not. So, yeah. Yeah. Of course. I'm losing my voice again this morning. I was losing my voice quite a bit this weekend. Or not this weekend. This last week. I was in Reno, Nevada from Monday until I left early Friday morning. Real early. Plane ride at 6 a.m., which means I got up at 2:30. And then we had to stand in line. So me and Game Format, we were there. It's a big Reno, the GAMA trade show, Game Manufacturers Association trade show. We've been there. This is our fourth time being there. We were there. We had a booth for Game 4, and Game 4 at this point is still currently paused, hibernated, depending on who you talk to, however you want to word that. We're working on it, but we've also been doing a lot of web and mobile consulting for tabletop gaming companies like Renegade Game Studios and The Op and Battle Foam and some others. And so we went there partially to talk about the app as well, but also to talk to other publishers or not other publishers. We're not publishers, but to talk to publishers and manufacturers and drum up some more business. So that's cool. So we were there, and by Thursday I was pretty hoarse because it's just loud. You know what I mean? Like, trade shows are loud anyway, and you kind of have to be heard a little bit more, especially when you're wearing masks, because people can't look at you and sort of read your lips a little bit. So you have to be a little bit louder. And there was in the evenings, there was a game demo room where different manufacturers were showing off their games. The people who come to this trade show are predominantly store owners and store employees and managers and stuff like that. So the publishers and whatnot are showing store owners, this is how our game works and that kind of stuff. And it's valuable that way. But that room specifically was loud. Oh my God. And so, yeah, I was going pretty hoarse by Thursday. But on the way out of town, we have this big, it looks like an oval trash can on wheels. It has two wheels and you pull it along, and it's this big plastic oval trash can, and it's actually a podium for our trade show booth, and everything fits inside of it. And then there you go. And you check it have oversized luggage at the airport. And the Reno airport does not have any just baggage line, or if they did, everybody there had skis because Lake Tahoe is nearby. So we got there with decent amount of time to spare, and then stood in line forever to check that big honking bag thing, that big honking thing. And then we luckily both Matt and I from Game 4, we both have the TSA pre-check thing, which it costs $85 and it's good for 5 years, and you have to go to your local airport and get fingerprinted and a bunch of stuff, and you have to make sure that you're not a bad person or whatever. But that's the only way we actually made our flight, because then we were able to go through the short super line with the TSA pre-check, because we'd been standing there forever. So we barely made it onto the plane, but we did. And then it was just a day of flying back, and Reno is real hard to get into flights wise. It's not awesome. Green Stuff World had a little container that reminds me of the pet water bowls that refill, but for paint water. It was an odd thing. Oh, that is. I just use honestly, I use the GW little gray cup, because first of all, you would never drink out of it. It's never one of those you'd be like, oh, this is a mug. Oops, It's hard to knock over because it's flared on the bottom. On the very bottom of the inside where the water goes, there's ridges in the bottom. So when you put your brush in there and wiggle them back and forth, you're kind of knocking the bristles across those ridges, which I find to be very useful. Yeah, I like that paint cup thingy quite a bit. I mean, I know it's silly. You go, oh, really? Paint cup? You can just use anything. But this is actually kind of nice. I like it. How often do you rinse a brush when painting? Every time you load the brush, or less? I always rinse it, obviously, between colors, I guess. And so that's... But I think that's obviously everybody kind of does that, unless you're trying to blend something. It depends. Sometimes I've noticed on Twitch, sometimes the paint, the brush will start to, I can tell it's starting to get hard, the paint's starting to dry on the inside, and that's no good. And then I try to wash it out. So Let's see. Are there any specific artists you'd like for models for 5 parsecs, space weirdos, etc.? Any specific artists you like? I mean, like 3D printing folks. I got to be honest. Most of the 3D printing stuff that I have purchased recently has been on Etsy, and then sometimes you don't really know who the sculptor is. Like they may mention it, or it might be in a picture or something like that if you're looking at like renders of the sculpts. But very frequently, like I haven't bought a lot of STLs. Like I don't currently. I do the Patreon for one-page rules, but not the I get models every month version, just the tier 1 version instead of the tier 2 version. So it's helping to support them. I get access to the rules and all that jazz and everything, but I'm not getting the miniature or the sculpts. Cyberforge stuff I dig when the subject is something I'm interested in. Like sometimes they make stuff for a game, not necessarily for games, but they're making stuff that I'm like, well, I don't really play that type of game, or I'm not looking for that type of model with them. When they do make something that I like, then I like it quite a bit. Actually, Cyberforge is kind of the sci-fi version of Titanforge. Titanforge is one of the big Patreons as well. Any plans to live stream from AdeptiCon? I don't think so. I've never know what the internet's like there. Hopefully they've got 5G, but I don't know. We'll have to check that out. Maybe. I believe that Vince is going to be still doing his Warhammer Weekly on Wednesday night after the GW Hootenanny, the big press thing. And I might be helping with some technical stuff on that. We actually have to talk about that tonight, I think. But yeah, so looking forward to seeing Vince again, and Tom and all kinds of other folks, obviously. It'll be great. Are there any specific online courses, YouTube channels you recommend to learn to be a better painter? Well, that might be something. I'd love to see top painters try drawing a Space Marine with a pen and paper. It would be fun to see the range of drawing skills versus coloring skills. Interesting. Let's see here. Since we're talking sculpts, I've been subscribed to Dragon Trapper's Lodge, and they always have awesome dragons. I mean, with the name like that, you would think so. It makes sense. Collecting STLs is a whole other hobby. Forget even printing them. Yeah, I do have some, like, what I have a tendency to do is sometimes is if I do find a model on, let's say, Etsy or someplace like that, and I'm like, oh, that's really cool, I will then go, if I'm not interested in buying it right now, I'll go and see if I can find the STL on My Mini Factory. Or if I'm looking for something on My Mini Factory and I find something unrelated but also super cool, sometimes I'll be like, well, that's $3, I'll buy that. And then I have all those STLs in a folder, actually on my Google Drive, so I don't lose them in theory. And so, yeah, I'll do that, and it's not too bad. Anvil Industries does fantastic sci-fi stuff. Just released alien mercs, a bunch of different alien species with guns and the like. Is that their digital Anvil? Is that the STLs, or is that some of the other stuff? Because, yeah, I love, like, all the resin stuff that I've gotten from Anvil Industry has all of it's like blown me away. It's really good stuff. The quality is really super good. Very little in the way of flash or mold lines or any of that kind of jazz. They all fit together real nice. Nothing ever seems to be warped, or bent. Excuse me. I have not messed with any of the, what do you call it? I've not messed with their digital stuff at all. So let's see here. Wouldn't recommend streaming on your return to AdeptiCon. Go and enjoy it. Get back into the flow vibe about it. Don't spend energy brain cells trying to schedule and coordinate streams. Yeah, no, I think I think you're not wrong. Streaming is like, if it was any kind of streaming, it would literally just be like on my phone, or something, and just be like, and sort of impromptu or ad hoc. And I don't know that there's a big benefit to doing that for me personally right now. Currently, my plans are definitely on Thursday night, after the show closes, after the exhibit hall closes, which closes at 6, I believe. I'm having dinner with Jason from Monument, I think Jason and Jen. And then also, I think Vince is going to be there, and Sam's going to be there, and I think Ninjon's going to be there. I'm not sure who else. So we'll be doing dinner someplace, and then and Friday night's going to be up in the free gaming area. And we'll, as I get closer to the date and we figure it out exactly, I'll announce a specific time and we'll post it on socials and all that jazz. But there will be a some Rain in Hell demos up in the free gaming area on Friday night. I think Vince gets done painting at 6:30. He's got a class he's teaching and stuff. So sometime after that, and then we'll be doing some demos and just hanging out and talking to people and whatever. So that'll be kind of like a meetup kind of a thing. So that'll be fun. I know I've got a bunch of meetings, but those are just, me talking to people and stuff like that. So yeah, that kind of thing. It'll be fun. Let's see here. Wouldn't recommend streaming. Oh, I just read that. Any mini painters that have moved on to other painting mediums successfully, canvas, sculpture. I know that one of the guys that James Wapple, I interviewed him in the last video back in 2017. I know he started in painting, oil on canvas, I believe. But definitely it was like painting like traditional, fine art type stuff, and then moved into miniature painting and kind of took a lot of those things and pulled them over to that. So that's pretty cool. Do you have advice for starting competition painting? That could be a decent question. Sure. Let's see here. STL collecting. I've got half a terabyte that I'm sorting through. Well, that's, yeah, definitely. Patreon STL for the digital anvil. Nice. Fully modular, so you can mix any kit with another. Yeah, see, that's the thing that's really cool about that stuff from Anvil Industry is that, like this arm very frequently on the more soldier types will have a stock built into it, and then the hand will like stop and there'll be a notch here, right? And then you can put any one of their guns into that notch. So it's like, oh, it's an AK-47. Oh, it's an M4. Oh, it's a weird space plasma rifle or whatever. And then that way you can mix and match easily. And they're very smart about making all that stuff very modular, which is cool. Jessica Rich does watercolors. That's a good point. She does. Yeah, I interviewed her in that thing back in 2017. And I own a print of one of her watercolors that I bought, I think, at the last AdeptiCon. Yeah. It's a small little print, but it's got a crow on it, and my wife and I we like crows. My first convention after this panorama, probably pandemic, but that's, autocorrect, will be Maker Central in Birmingham, UK. There's a certain amount of social anxiety about it that I've never experienced in the past. Did you feel that? So I didn't go to Las Vegas Open. I was supposed to go to Las Vegas Open in January, but the numbers were at an all-time high. So 2 weeks before I was like, no. So I didn't go to that. This is AdeptiCon will be I think the first gaming. Well, that's not true. I went to Gen Con last year, but at that time the numbers were kind of down. We all still had to wear masks and stuff like that, but the numbers were kind of down. It'll be interesting to see what goes on this year at AdeptiCon because they announced a couple weeks back that masks will not be required because, well, vaccination is required, so you got to be vaxxed. But masks will not be required because the state has changed their laws or whatever the rules, and there's no current mask mandate or whatever the deal is. So they're like, okay, well, you have to be vaxxed, but beyond that, you don't need to wear a mask. If you want to wear a mask, sure, maybe even recommended, whatever. So it'll be interesting to see what people do. At the Gamma trade show, people were real good about wearing masks, but as soon as you got into a restaurant area or a bar area or whatever, people would obviously take them off. It's real hard to eat, with the mask on. So yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how that goes. Because the whole event is held at this place called the Peppermill Resort and Casino, which is it's an interesting place. I like it. That being said, there'd be most of the people out in the casino area were not masked, but there were still a surprising number of people who were. I mean, very frequently they're sitting there, they get the mask pulled down underneath their chin and they're like smoking while they're playing like penny slots and stuff like that. And I'm like, yeah, okay. But anyway, that's where you're at. So we will see how it goes. Hello from Sweden. You wrote, nice t-shirt on the live chat in Warhammer Weekly because I was wearing the Live, Laugh, Blood for the Blood God. And I never got a chance to answer. Oh, absolutely. Konstantinos, how you doing? Yes, I did. Yeah. It was nice to see. I'm thinking about, I don't know. There's a part of me that wants to redesign that shirt a little bit, but right now, not so much. It's a good shirt. It's I think it's my second best seller. Might be first, but it might be. It's either that one or the more punk rock kind of Pachow shirt. It's one of those two that are basically the best sellers. So, did you see Casey and Brent at the Reno show? Oh boy, did I! Yes, actually, we went to dinner on Tuesday night, and then Casey had to do something, so we didn't have dinner with him on Wednesday night, but Brent was there at dinner then that night too. And then I think it was on Thursday, the two of them were hanging out in the Asmodee booth, because I guess Asmodee is the distributor. I don't know if they're an exclusive distributor or just a distributor. I'm assuming exclusive, because that's kind of how they like to roll. But they're going to become a distributor, or perhaps the distributor, for Duncan Rhodes' new paint line. He did a Kickstarter X amount of time ago. So they had the paints there. It was unclear whether they were final production or not, but basically Casey and Brent were in the booth, like, painting. Like, it wasn't planned. Like, they weren't supposed to be like, hey, these guys will be here. They just brought models with them, and they were like, because they'd seen it, the day before on Wednesday. So they're like, well, heck, on Thursday, let's just go stay in their booth and paint. Because they asked, and the guys were like, the paints were there available for people to try. But a lot of people just weren't trying them because they got other stuff to do. So Brent and Casey just sat there and painted for like 2 hours. And then I guess I think Asmodee gave them the paints, or gave them some or whatever. And then they were going to make some videos at Casey's house. Casey lives in Reno, from what I understand. So I think that, if I remember correctly, I think Brent is staying with Casey for the next couple of days, and then they're coming to AdeptiCon. Well, I don't know if Casey's coming to AdeptiCon. I know Brent is. I actually don't know if Casey is or not. I'm hoping so. It was nice. It was good to see them. Good to see them there. Let's see here. I think mini painting is an excellent exercise. I thought it said excuse. Exercise in understanding volumes and becoming familiar with it. True. Very true. Took a step away from the line art and painted minis for a time. I think my drawing has improved. Yeah, I can definitely, I know there's certain things that after learning how to paint it, it makes more sense than to draw it for me. Maybe more coloring than anything, but yes, like understanding the way that you simulate highlights hitting things and stuff like that. Painting has miniatures has made that easier for me. And panorama was intentional. It's a thing that people will use any multi-syllabic P word as pandemic for. I gotcha. Will there be physical copies of Rain and Hell for purchase at AdeptiCon? Yes. I talked with Hank. So the two main kind of guys who sort of, head up AdeptiCon are Hank and Matthias. And I asked Hank if we could pay them, because, like, it's not cool when you go to a convention if there's a bunch of vendors there who paid booth fees and stuff like that, or whatever, to have a big booth and all that kind of stuff. And it's not cool if you're just like trying to sell stuff out of your, like, out of the trunk of your car or whatever, conventions and whatnot. That being said, I talked to him and I said, we're just going to bring, I don't know, we might have 20 copies. I don't even know if we have that many sitting around. And I said, what can I, and he's like, don't worry about it. So we'll just be doing it on Friday night. So if you get to come to that thing on Friday night, it'll just, like I said, be upstairs in the free gaming area. There'll be more information as we get closer to the launch. In theory, yes. So there we go. The stream just go down? That's what people are saying? Oh, that's weird. One thing I'd be interested to hear pro painters comment on, if a beginner doesn't need to know color theory, how will they know when the time is right? Oh, you'll know. I'm not sure. Let's see here. I was wearing my Blood for the Blood God t-shirt at a gaming store in Adelaide last weekend. Store owner spotted it, and it was signed, and we ended up chatting for hours about positivity in the hobby. Nice. Great conversation starter. Absolutely. Good morning, Uncle Adam. How was Gamma, and did you try the too thin coats? I did not try the paint. No. Gamma was good. We talked to a bunch of people. It was it's kind of weird being back, but it was good to be back. I think that next year is the last year at that facility. There is talk that 2024 is maybe going to be in Lexington, Kentucky, but that also might change, so not sure. But I think that next year is the last year at the Pepper Mill in Reno, so that'll be interesting. But we talked to a bunch of different people. I had a good long conversation with in the bar with Eric Benson, who is the he's with Penny Arcade. If you're familiar with Penny Arcade, the webcomic, he is their VP of Business Development, I believe, and he's very frequently on their tabletop gaming streams. He's into tabletop gaming, so there's times when it is Jerry, aka Tycho, and then Kiko, who is their like head of graphic design and all that kind of stuff. And they've been playing Kill Team, they've been playing Combat Patrol and stuff like that. And Eric is usually there with them. And then lately, Eric has been doing painting streams, sometimes with Jerry, sometimes with Laura, and stuff like that. So I'd recognized him from the streams, and I've chatted on their streams before and stuff, and they know who I am. Evidently, Jerry and Kiko like my channel, which I appreciate. And so we talked a little bit for a while, me and Eric. And so, yeah, I'm going to be going to PAX East in Boston. PAX is the Penny Arcade Expo. It's those huge, giant conventions that they do. And I'm going to be going to that one for the first time actually next month, end of April. So, and hopefully I'm going to play some games with Jerry and Kiko. That'll be a lot of fun, I hope. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm bringing a game at Rain in Hell. Jerry had asked when I was going to be able to come and teach him how to play the game. So I was like, oh, that's sure. I'll come out to Boston. So looking forward to that. Let's see here. Bit too early to be painting here in New Zealand, but wanted to jump in and say hi to everyone. Thanks, Uncle Adam, for all the great content you produce. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Yes, the notorious EJB. Indeed. Yeah, super nice guy. It was very, very fun to chat with him. At one point, we were talking. We're in the kind of the bar that's right near where most of Gamma is inside the building. There's multiple bars in that place, but this is the biggest one, I think. And as we were talking, like his phone was laying on the bar, and he was getting a call, and I just on the screen there it just said Jerry Hulkins, which is Tycho. And so I was like, "Hey, Jerry, I think is calling you." And he's like, "Oh yeah." And so he put it on speaker, and he's like, "Hey, Jerry, I'm here talking to Uncle Adam from Tabletop Minions," and then we were chatting and stuff, and it was a lot of fun. So yeah, he's a good dude. Eric is on their homebrewing show too. Yeah, I've watched a little bit of that. I'm not into homebrewing. Like, it's not, my brother does it. My younger brother's big into homebrewing, so I don't grok a lot of what they're talking about. But it's cool to see that they make this show where basically the crowd, the viewers get to vote on like what they're going to do for all the different ingredients and stuff like that. I think that's kind of neat. So yeah. Don't bother with Zenithal on Flames of War tanks. Base coating, dark wash, and a couple of dry brushing stages are fine. That is very true. Military stuff is all the same color. So when you're painting generally Flames of War tanks, you paint them some sort of military color, throw a wash on them, maybe dry brush some brown on the treads even, or something like that, and throw like a darker wash on top of that. Now, if you're going to go into German and you want to go into, they had that weird, what is it called? Dunkelgarb. It's a type of weird camo that they've used to put on some of the tanks at one point during World War II. I've seen it done well, and I've also seen it done not well. So, if you want to go down that way, Dunkelgarb. You took German in high school. Dunkel is dark. Okay, well, there you go. So anyway, yeah, that kind of camo is interesting to paint, but it's a little bit more of a pain in the butt. I generally played US, so you're just like, okay, olive drab and a wash, and we're done. It's actually kind of nice. Let's see here. Question: who is your favorite painter and why? That's not a bad question to ask as well. So if anyone's new here, just since the beginning of the stream, back in 2017 I made a video at AdeptiCon where I asked a bunch of pro painters. I asked 7 pro painters 6 questions, all the same 6 questions, and then I made a video where I had their answers, and it was really interesting to see different people's answers to the same questions and all that kind of stuff, and it was relatively popular. I'm thinking about doing it again, planning on doing it again, really, at AdeptiCon this year. And so, but I can't necessarily ask the exact same people or necessarily even the exact same questions. There's a part of me that wants to ask all new painters the original questions, but I'm not sure yet. Anyway, I'm also looking to just maybe ask a bunch of new questions. So if you have a question you'd like to ask of a bunch of pro painters, if you throw just the word question and then maybe like a colon, not a semicolon, that will be weird, but something like that into the chat here, then I'll have a good list of questions hopefully to ask a bunch of folks at AdeptiCon. Dunkel Gelb is dark yellow. Oh yeah, there you go. I disagree. Zenithal everything, even if it's all the same color, you still get subtle highlights and a shadow. I wouldn't do a black and white Zenithal on a tank. You're not wrong. I would say that if you had two different shades of olive drab, if olive drab was your base color, and they were sort of close to each other, that wouldn't be bad. It may be a little overkill, but it might not be. Like if you based like a dark green and then sprayed from above with like a dark olive green, and then sprayed from above with a lighter olive green, but not too light to make it too high contrast, I think you would look fine on a small little Flames of War tank. It also depends on the size of the tank. If you're talking bolt action tank, I think that the Zenithal between a light green and a dark green makes more sense. Whereas a smaller vehicle, it becomes, I'm not sure. I don't know. It might look a little too, you know how sometimes things look too airbrushy and you don't, maybe that's the thing you're going for, but I have a tendency sometimes when things look too airbrushy, then I'm like, yeah. Yeah, that could be part of it there too. Maybe if I can make it to AdeptiCon next year, you can teach me how to play your new yet to be released game. By that point, it'll be out, yes, because it'll be coming out this summer. In theory, it should be out before we go to Gen Con, honestly, and that's because that's in early August. So that's the plan there. I want to return to some bolt action stuff I started a while ago, but I'm a bit concerned about not getting it 100% historically accurate paint scheme wise. I would tell you not to worry about it, but I'm also not a historical player. So there's that. Yeah. I mean, I think there's more things to worry about in the world than, like, and I'm not saying that you're worrying about it. I'm saying if someone comes up to you and is like, that's not the right color on your thing, I would be like, hey, thanks. And then just like, stop paying attention to them is what I would do. I wouldn't like, tell them to get bent or anything like that. I would just be like, oh, okay, thanks. I appreciate that. And then just, you're done with that conversation now. You know what I mean? You don't need that kind of negativity in your life. If they want to like push it, just be like, I'm sorry, I didn't ask your opinion, something like that. But because I'm more interested usually in alternate history stuff, then if they come up and they go, that's not the right color, I'll be like, oh, are the colors on my trench maggots, are they the right color here for World War I giant trench maggots that are eating people through the trenches? Is this the right color for that? I want to make sure I got that color right before I get the color of this guy's helmet right, or whatever, That's why I like alternate history, because then you can't have that conversation usually, or it's easy to deflect. Let's say that. What defines a pro painter, and is that different than a working painter? Well, you may have blown my mind there. That's a good question. Let's see here. Can I ask a few questions from the painters you talked to before and old questions from the new painters you interview, maybe? Yeah, potentially. That's possible. Yeah. I mean, I know that Sam will be there. I know that, or at least I'm pretty sure that James and Kathy Wapple will be there. I don't think that Tom will be there. He was the last American Slayer Sword winner back in 2013. I'm not sure if Jessica Rich is going to be there. Tommy Back, I think, will be there. Vince will be there, of course. Chris Bellew, I don't know if he's going or not this year. That's a good question. I hope so. I'd like to see Chris again. I haven't seen him in a long time. Who else did I talk to in that video? I forget now. But yeah, so like I said, being a bit of a, I don't want to say a completionist because I'm rarely a completionist, but it would be weird if I asked like most of the same people the same, or that, what I mean? Like that would make a weird video if there's like, well, there was 2 of them that didn't show up, and I'd be like, So I don't know. That's why I'm trying to not make it kind of hinge on that I'm asking the same questions or different questions, but of the same people or stuff like that. I want it to be a little bit more, fluid than that. Trench maggots are always a shade of taupe. I wouldn't think like a off-white, really, kind of a sickly off-white. I love the passive aggression of, are these trench maggots accurate? See, well, that's the question. I mean, that, you know, no one wants, you know, what's the term? It's basically unasked for advice, unsolicited advice. That's the word I'm looking for. No one wants it, unsolicited advice. That's why it's unsolicited, I think. But there are people out there who will definitely give you advice when you don't ask. And that's a character flaw, in my opinion. There are times I look at something, maybe it's a paint job or something like that, and I'd be like, I could go up and tell them, you should maybe thin your paints. But if they come and ask me, they go, hey, this isn't quite right, is it? What do you think I should do? And I'd be like, well, you should thin your paints. But I'm not going to go over to a person and say, you know what you should do? Because that's, you always turn into a dick as soon as, like, you immediately, yeah, that's always the case. So yeah, they're just, when someone comes up to you and tells you what you're doing wrong in painting, in a hobby that you enjoy, that's a bad conversation starter right there. So yeah, I will maybe be a little passive aggressive in that situation, or just be like, and then not, you know, So I don't know. But yeah, that's my idea there. Question, what do you think about speed paint? Yeah. Like speed painting in general, or specifically the army painter speed paint? That there may be some that haven't used it, probably, because if you didn't get any sent to you initially, I think you get the starter box. I think you can get the starter boxes in store, but the big set's not releasing until, actually, I think during AdeptiCon. So maybe they'll have the big mega set at AdeptiCon. I don't know. Historical accuracy is another way to make you spend, so you have to buy 50 identical tanks for a game that only allows 2 at a time. Yeah, that's, yeah. Which paint surprised you by tasting? Almost good when eaten accidentally. What is the tastiest paint? There you go. Yet to find a paint that tastes good or smells good, for that matter. Honestly, the previous versions of the holy triad of washes, you know, so now you've got Nuln Oil, Agrax Earthshade, and Seraphim Sepia. Back in the day, it was, I forget what the black wash was. The brown wash was, Delvin Mud. And then I forget what the sepia color was. Delvin Mud was this. Delvin Mud, when you smelled it, it smelled almost slightly fruity or something. It smelled pretty good. And I think that's because they were actually literally using floor polish in the mixture that they were making and selling. And so that floor polish probably had some sort of, you know, fresh scent or whatever. And so yeah, so but the new colors, or yeah, the new ones don't smell good necessarily. They don't smell bad, but they don't smell good. So yeah. Kung Pao asks, what was the one thing that was your aha moment and opened the door to the fastest improvement in your technique and results? That's not a bad question either. Like, it's kind of, let's see here. Did I have anything like that in the old one? If you could redo your journey, do high quality paints and brushes really help? What helped you increase your skill working in high volume or a few models? How important is it? Color theory? Is there a common piece of, yeah, that's not a bad one. That's not bad at all. I could see that. As someone who has done his, I was like, someone who has done his historicals. And I was like, his historicals? That's, again, historicals. I get you. For the last 50 years, as long as the paint is close, you're doing good, especially if you're doing something in World War II. There were shortages of the dyes in war. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's always that guy. Also true. I had that happen to me when someone had told me my army was wrong. I had Alpha Legion army where half of them were blue and half were green. See, that's the, yeah. Got to say cadmium yellow is the best tasting paint. You are not supposed to eat cadmium yellow. Do not, anything with the word cadmium, titanium, anything like that. Well, just don't eat paint, first of all. I went to school for art, and we had a class that was basically don't eat paint. But still, yeah, it's definitely not, I mean, I'm not a brush, well, I was going to say I'm not a brush licker. That's not true. I sometimes lick my brush, mainly more to point it. So, like, I paint, water, bring it out of the water, back and forth on a piece of paper towel, and then sometimes I'll just, and I don't even know why, but I'll just stick my mouth and just kind of and pull it out, so that it's pointed again, and then a little bit of paint, and then back onto the model. But there are also plenty of folks out there who will like actually like lick some paint off their brush so they can go back and blend without having to go completely to the water and all that jazz again. And that I don't do. That I've isn't the yick. Not my jam. Good morning, all. A little tardy to the party. A little under the weather. Well, I hope you feel better, DJ Todd P. Harris. AVS, how you doing? Let's see here. How do you go from trying to recreate the box to doing your own thing? I'm having more fun after realizing I'm a weekend warrior hobbyist. Yeah, I can see that. That's not a bad question either. Is paste still okay to eat? I mean, not dying from chemical ingestion 101. I mean, that was not the official name of the course. I think it was called Art Theory. I'm like, oh, Art Theory, that's interesting. And literally after it was like a 1 day a week, like one credit course or whatever, but it was requirement for an art major when I was in school. And at the end of the class, it was basically just them saying over and over again, stop eating your paint supplies, dumbass. I mean, it was just not, just don't eat paint, don't eat this, don't lick that, don't sniff that. It was just a lot of that, which makes sense. I get it. Heavy metals in general are not good to eat, strongly nerve damaging. Yeah. I mean, and you get some of that in photography too, because back in the day when you were, printing your own stuff, I think it was in the Fixer, or is it in the, no. Well, so there's a lot of silver in film, silver halide, but still silver, and it's a heavy metal and it's bad. So when you were printing your pictures, you would put the piece of paper underneath the enlarger, shine light through negative onto piece of paper. There you go. Take piece of paper, put it into the first bath, which was developer. And you let it sit there for a while. Picture shows up, like in the movies when they put it in the thing and they move it around and the picture fades in. That's not special effects. That's just how those pictures work. They fade in kind of like that. And then you get to the point and then you take it out of the developer and it would keep developing for a good long time, not forever, but for a real good long time. And you want to now fix it where it is. And if I remember correctly, it was developer to then just like basically kind of a water wash and then fixer, or was it developer, fixer, and then water wash? Anyway, the reason you use tongs is because otherwise you absorb the silver that gets left behind in the printing process. You absorb it in through your skin and it goes into your liver or your kidneys. One of the two. Someplace it's not supposed to be, and that's bad. So there were older photographers who would just like use their hands to move things around, but I was always like tongs. I'm like, yeah, silver's not a thing to have in your body. That's a terrible thing. So yeah, all things being considered, I really am glad that I don't do developing by hand anymore. It's all digital. It's all ball bearings and digital these days and pixels. So there you go. Maybe we should try cake decorating paint for gaming. This way the discussion. Oh, yeah. How should be the commander in a Panther company? The Black Panther or Pink Panther? I will be getting more for my Germans and will be painting one tank blank and one tank pink. Oh, there you go. Hello, is Zona Alpha a good game to start skirmish warfare? Thank you. I think so. Start is maybe a strong word, and the only reason that I'm saying that it's maybe a difficult, like if you've never played a miniature game before, Zona Alpha may not be the best for starting. It's not bad. I would honestly say you'd be a little better off with maybe Space Weirdos, which I talked about 2 weeks ago on the Friday show. If you watched the Friday video from 2 weeks ago called Why I Like It, I did that video and I talked about Space Weirdos, and I thought that one would be pretty good for starting. The only reason that I think that if you've never played miniatures before, that Zona Alpha might not be good is because there are some things in there where they don't spell things out perfectly. There's even some rules in there where you're kind of probably going to end up house ruling it with your friends a little bit. And if you don't have a background in playing some miniature games already, you might be like, I don't understand what I'm supposed to do here. It's not, it's not a perfect rule set, Zona Alpha. It's very cool. I dig the theme and all that stuff, and it's well done, but there are some tiny holes here and there, and sometimes when you're first starting out, it's not good to have holes in your rule set. So maybe something like I said, Space Weirdos. If you're looking for fantasy, I would tell you to look for Song of Blades and Heroes by Ganesha Games. Is it Ganesha or Ganesha? I don't know. It's pronounced one of those two ways. Both of those games are great, I think, for starters, for new people. Photochemicals are nasty stuff. It's true. It's true. I've wondered how cake decorators clean their airbrushes. I don't even know. That's a good question. Stop bath first. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so you went from developer to stop bath and then stop bath to fixer. That's right. Zona Alpha is fantastic, especially with the expansion. Not too difficult to learn, but still had a lot of depth. It's not difficult to learn, but like I said, there are a little bit here and there. There are points where there's like little holes where you're like, and if you've been playing for a while, you're like, we're just going to do this. Well, you know, it's little things like that, but it's still, I think, a lot of fun. I really do. Developer stop bath fixer into a sink full of water. Yep. Thanks to black and white photo class in undergrad and not wearing tongs and gloves, I now have a silver allergy. Interesting. I didn't know. You didn't know that would turn out like that way. But yeah, our professor in college in the photography department was always like, use tongs. Don't stick your fingers in there, which makes sense. How popular has Rain in Hell been? I mean, we've sold pretty well. We've been real happy with the amount of sales we've done with it. Yeah, and it's also had like a lot of we've been amazed by the number of people who have done battle reports and made and like the things that we've seen on Instagram and Twitter and stuff like that. People converting and people building, and also there's two Facebook groups that started. There's a subreddit, and like I said, I've seen a lot of stuff on Twitter, and I've seen stuff on Instagram. There was even a person over Finland, maybe Sweden, somewhere over there, who basically kickstarted. He's a sculptor, and he kickstarted a line of miniatures that STL files that were based off of our game. Like, he kind of didn't ask us. And I'm not going to tell a guy, hey, you can't use Earth. But basically, we did contact him and say, hey, could you put in the Kickstarter that you're not affiliated with us? Because we weren't affiliated with him. So we didn't want him to make it seem as if, we had paid him or he was part of our company or anything like that. But we also weren't going to, tell him, hey, don't do this. Like, we didn't make up, none of the names of the types of demons that we used are like very particularly copyrightable. You know how like Games Workshop likes to change things to have strange names that they can then copyright so no one can ever use it again or whatever. We've got spined demons, tentacle demons, Mephit. Those, you can't really do much with those, which is fine. That wasn't our plan to begin with. We weren't here to copyright a bunch of terms. So, but yeah, long story short is we've been really happy with the results of people, people being excited about the game and being interested and all that kind of stuff. So that's very cool, I think. I can confirm photo processing fixative is bad. Was a preparer in darkroom in previous life, skins messed up. Yep. What do you think the next thing to revolutionize painting techniques or mini painting as a hobby will be? What could create an impact the way 3D printers have? Oh, that's a good question too. Not bad. Let's see here. Don't eat paint. And rattle can propellant is bad too. Yeah, that's why I always spray outside. I don't like to spray in the house at all. I'm curious, why not Stargrave Frostgrave as a starter? Seems flexible. I think, again, I think because those games are so oriented in campaign play, I think that's difficult for a person who's completely new to the hobby to kind of start with, to some degree. Just because, you can play them one-off, but it's really focusing on also kind of almost like a little bit of what I like to call the RPG aspects of Frostgrave and Stargrave, which I think are great games, don't get me wrong, but I think that they may be difficult to just jump in, as a first-time player. I think it may be a situation where you might need to, tweak things a little bit or start with Start with a simpler game, not even simpler necessarily. Start with a game with less going on around the outside of it. Just the actual game loop of I'm playing and fighting and whatnot. That's a good place to start. And then once you've gotten a handle on that stuff and you're like, now I want my characters to like get better and get cool and get better skills and stuff like that as we play multiple games, then yeah, Frostgrave and Stargrave would be great to move into. But I think I think you would be overwhelmed by the book as a beginner, I think. Now, if you are a beginner, but you've got friends who've been playing for a while, then it's a much different story. But if you and your friend have never played miniature games before, I think that there's a lot of miniature lines out there that would be a little overwhelming to start. So something simpler is not a bad idea to start. And then once you kind of get the hang of it, then you can obviously take those skills that you've learned and move them into all kinds of other types of games. I was a house painter in my youth for a while. Watched a coworker accidentally get a huge glob of paint into his open mouth while working on an overhead surface. One of the funniest things I ever saw. See, that's icky. I don't want to do that either. I found that 5 parsecs from home is a good start solo for skirmish games. Huh, okay. Yeah, that one's, I mean, see, that one's also very campaign oriented, but... and this is the thing. There are people out there who've either been playing tabletop games, not specifically miniatures, but tabletop games for a good long time, that as a beginner could be like, oh yeah, no, I could handle whatever, and that's cool. But I think if we're looking for the way to remove the most hurdles from somebody's experience starting to get into the hobby, I think it's a good idea to start with a relatively simple system that is just one-off style games and, you know, no campaigns and stuff like that, because the thinner the book, the less instruction there are overall, the less, even though a big book that has tons of information in it, but you only really need that first few pages or whatever to learn the game, that's still, you look at this book and go, oh geez, there's so much in there. Like I've showed, you know, like Warhammer 40K books to people before, you know, cousins and stuff like that come over, and I'm like, oh yeah, they're like, what do the rules look like? And you hand them this big thick book and they're like, geez, and you're like, it's so little of that book is actually, you know, actual core rules. So much of it is fluff and hobby stuff and this and that and campaigns and whatever. And so, yeah, that's, it's still way too big of a book though. Glad I could drop by and contribute a question to a great time. Absolutely. Got to go. Not a problem, Evan. Saw a TikToker painting a book nook kit recently, dropped some paint into her tea and insisted on drinking it as if she was not wasting that tea bag. Oh, it's not a good idea. If you had the skills to 3D sculpt, what miniature would you like to make? Gosh, that's a good question. I don't know. I think that I would like... I think it would be fun to try to make some weird aliens. And by weird aliens, I don't just mean like, oh, put a different head on a bipedal dude, but like really like odd, you know, shapes that, like, when you see aliens in movies and TV shows, there's that. But then when you start to talk to scientists about what might be alien life, they will go off into crazy directions. Now, that's not necessarily a fun model to make, where you have this sentient mold or something like that, you know, but you know, like, I don't know, like something that's got a lot of gas bladders in it that can float, or something that is it's got like 3 legs, so it's more, you know, instead of being bisected or like we are generally as people with, you know, 2 arms and 2 legs and stuff, like have some just weird stuff like that, but yet still being able to work it into a game situation would be kind of interesting. I think you don't see a ton of that really. What about Zombicide as a starter? I consider Zombicide to be what I like to call a gateway game. So gateway games are games that kind of straddle the line between board games and miniature games. And so I would say that definitely Zombicide is one of the most well-known kind of gateway games for that a board gamer can play, but start to learn the idea of positionality and range and stuff like that. And it can hopefully bring you maybe into the world of wargaming and miniatures and stuff like that, you know, down that way. Warhammer Gore Chosen is really good fun, introducing miniatures and some cards. Yeah, I can see that. That's what those games are designed for. Like that one and Space Marine Adventures and stuff like that are all designed, again, to be kind of gateway games. Warhammer Underworlds is a great starter intro game. It loses that when you deck build for competitions. Yeah, which is why I think they've brought back, there's a version called Rivals or something like that. I think that's what it's called, where you play it, but you have specific deck. You don't get to tweak it. You're like, this is the deck you use with this warband. Play this game. And I like that because, yeah, the deck building got way out of hand on that game. So if you were not a pro painter, what do you think that you would be doing with your time? That's a good question to ask as well, I think. Yeah. Maybe not so much like what would you be doing with your time, but maybe is there some other hobby that you would be, interested in or something like that? That might not be a bad idea. Are there any skirmish games that you can play solo? Oh, tons, yeah. There's a solo add-on for Zona Alpha that I mentioned. Our Reign in Hell has got an expansion that we added onto it to add solo and co-op play. The next game that we produce is going to have solo and co-op play baked in right from the get. Star Saga from Mantic has got that kind of built into it, into the rules. I believe so does Fallout Wasteland Warfare. So yeah. Zombie Smith makes some interesting little alien critters for a game called War of Ashes. Well, they make the Quar as well for this Quar's War. Isn't that what it's called? The Quar are like walking upright kind of anteaters. They're like, they have these sort of fat kind of bodies, like these fat little tummies and these short little legs, and there's kind of, regular kind of arms, and then they have these heads that come out to like a snout almost. And I actually picked up a bunch of those models back when they were in metal. I kind of hope that they move into that. One of the guys from Zombie Smith Games posted something just recently, like on Facebook, like within the last couple of days, about SioCast. So I really hope they're going to start producing their models in SioCast, because I have a hard time working in multi-part models that are metal these days, especially really tiny ones. And the heads on those little Quar guys are separate, and so it's tough to do. And they're so small, they're almost difficult to pin, really difficult to pin, actually. Anywho, long story short is, yes, I've taught, I actually had a good long conversation with one of the guys from Zombie Smith at the Las Vegas Open 2018, I think, maybe. But yeah, it's neat stuff. Seriously, Uncle Adam, I would gladly offer my non-humanoid aliens for your book. I just started making non-humanoid aliens because sci-fi only has painted humans with latex foreheads. I've seen a bunch of those. Yeah. That blasted Samoflange. Well, if you get the chance, shoot me a message or email someplace or whatever. My information's out there in the world. But yeah, let me know. I'll take a look at it. Song of Blades and Heroes for the win. Absolutely. Blades and Heroes, that's a great game. I think so. Pumpernickel Pickle, tattoo artist. Oh, what would you be doing otherwise? Actually, yeah, Sam is a tattoo artist. That's true. When I first met him, we met at the tattoo parlor he was working at. I was getting a tattoo from his boss, and I was sitting there in the chair and kind of chatting with her, and I saw this tall guy over here with long hair, and he was like cleaning his brush, not his brush, his needle gun thing or whatever, getting ready for maybe the next, he was either just done and cleaning up or just getting ready for the next person. And then, you got to pre-clean and all that stuff. And then I'm like, he's got like a little shelf next to him on the wall. And I'm like, is that a golden demon? And he's like, what? And I'm like, is that a golden demon? And he's like, oh yeah. I just won it like recently and stuff. And that's when we first met. So yeah. It was pretty cool. The color of trench maggots varies depending on what they've been eating. That checks out, honestly. Yeah, no, they would be kind of a bit translucent, I think. That makes total sense. Hey, Adam, good to see you. What do you think about skirmish games that have a recursion or summoning mechanic? Games like Warcaster, where you cannot table someone. I think it's kind of a cool idea, you know what I mean? You have to really then tweak your scenarios. Obviously, you're not going to do the normal, I just try to kill the other side kind of game if the other side can keep coming back. But I mean, that's kind of a deal that you work with in many situations, not all, but many scenarios in like Space Hulk. It's just like the Tyranids, the Gene Stealers are just going to keep coming. And you have to be able to do the thing you need to get done before you're all dead. I kind of like that concept. Obviously, sometimes then you need a lot more models than you might otherwise. But especially with solo play games, it makes a ton of sense, really. Hey, Christopher Dick, how you doing? See you fellas at AdeptiCon next week? Definitely. Looking forward to it. Glad to finally catch you live. I pivoted to Skirmish from 40k recently after watching your vids, enjoying Warcry and Space Weirdos immensely, finishing up my Skaven Warband now. Nice. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with 40k. Don't get me wrong. Well, yeah, okay. In my opinion, there are some things that are wrong with it, but that's just my opinion, man. But for me, army games in general, doesn't matter who makes it, I'm just not interested in pushing around that many models anymore. So I'm always looking for games where I am maybe pushing around 10, 5 to 10, maybe 15 models max on a nice small board, 3x3 or smaller. I'm not really interested in vehicles too much anymore, like tanks and things like that. Maybe a tank, stuff like that. But it's in general, I'm looking for smaller skirmish games because I just prefer that style for a couple different reasons. I prefer having my models be separate from each other and not having to move around in a squad. I got to be honest, it feels to me like sometimes when the whole concept behind squads in games is just to sell you more models. You know what I mean? Also, I just don't want to paint or transport or build that many models. I want to be able to take more time per model if I can, instead of being like, oh, I got to crank out 40 of these ghosts or whatever. As I would rather just be like, I'm going to make 5 of these ghosts, but I'm going to spend extra time on each one and really kind of, that's my thing lately. So we will see. Mantix The Walking Dead has solo rules. That is also true. Oh, and Rangers of Shadow Deep, obviously, yes, that one's also got a definite solo rule thing going on there. That's main kind of thing, solo co-op. Walking Dead, I think, is just about out of production, I believe. I think the license ended or something like that, and I think they're trying to get rid of that stuff. I do wonder, as coming from a traditional painting background, how many pro painters had art experience in other mediums. I think a lot of them, honestly. I do. Saw a video on that new Mantic Firefight box. Looks pretty wicked. Tons of models. 71, I think. There's Space Orcs and Enforcers. See, for me, that's too many models. That's why if I'm interested in something from them, I would be slightly more interested in Dead Zone is what it's called. What is SioCast and who? Oh, SioCast. It's SioCast, C-A-S-T. And it's just basically, it's a company that makes this interesting new injection molded plastic that is way cheaper to produce because you don't need steel molds or even aluminum molds. You use galvanized rubber molds to injection mold plastic into, which has kind of never really been a thing. And now it is. And you're going to start seeing a lot of smaller companies be able to produce decent plastic, like nice, really high quality plastic miniatures because of it, I think. I'm about to travel to where he lives to get a tattoo from Sam Lenz himself. Nice. Nice. Let's see here. 30 is about maximum limit for my force for me anyway. Yeah, and it's a personal preference thing. There are people who absolutely love the pushing around as many models as possible. Sometimes it's the immersion of it, the spectacle of it, Sometimes it's like I want to have a game where I'm able to, have so many different kind of fronts that are going on that hopefully maybe I'm losing over here, but I'm winning over here, that kind of thing, or whatever. And that's fine too. That's, again, it's personal preference. For me personally, I want to push around 5 to 10 guys and have them sneak up and attack 5 to 10 other guys or whatever, that kind of thing. That's just my personal preference. Well, talk of skirmish. Ever play the new XCOM games? Imagine you would love it. Like the video games or the like tabletop board game type things. I have not played the tabletop board games. I used to play the original XCOM on the PC way back in the day. I was never particularly good at it. I'm not particularly good at skirmish games these days either. I enjoy playing them, but I'm no pro for sure. But yeah, I have played at least the older XCOM stuff. I even played the XCOM. It wasn't called XCOM. It was called something else. Laser Squad Elite or something like that. But it was basically made by the folks who made XCOM, and it was a Game Boy Advance game, maybe. Or maybe Game Boy, maybe DS? I don't remember. But it was one of those that was kind of hard to find. Like, you couldn't just go into a store and pick it up. I had to, like, order it from someplace because it was a relatively small publisher or whatever. Thoughts about 8mm to 10mm games? High model count, low detail, fast painting. I've never liked real small, like,
15 millimeters, the smallest I ever got, and it was nice because it was tanks, like Flames of War, but I hated painting the little dudes. I don't know why. I just don't like little tiny models like that, like little tiny infantry, like they're this tall, and it's just not my jam. Again, personally me. Well said. I do still enjoy 40K, but with 2 young kids, I can't get out as often. Fitting more than one game into a session is a big plus for skirmish. That's another big deal about skirmish games versus big army games. And Sam and I were talking about this not too long ago. A big army game, like if you play for 2.5, 3 hours and then lose, you're real bummed out because you spent all that time and you lost. If you play for 30 to 45 minutes and you lost, you're like, okay, cool. Let's play another one. You know, it's not like you feel like you wasted a good portion of your, like a appreciative portion of your day. You just were like, okay, cool. That was 30 minutes. Let's do it again. At least if you're me. So yeah, the longer those games go, the less interested I am as well. I would rather play 3 games in an hour and a half, 2 hours, than just play one long game in 2.5 to 3 hours. It's just, again, something I prefer. I understand about the overwhelming models to play with, especially game time factors, but if GW makes a 40K, if GW makes 40K a switchback system like Infinity does with their skirmish games, a switchback system, you mean like where you got to like interrupt like what's going on when it's not your turn, and like, because from what I understand from the few demos that I've had of Infinity, one of them was at AdeptiCon. Like, what do they call it? AROs? Is that what it's called? Where you're moving your character and you move out in the open, and this guy can see you to shoot you, and so they can do an interrupt and then say, "Oh, I'm going to take a shot at you," as you're walking in between these 2 porta potties, whatever, and you fire at the person. I mean, that would help, at least in the boredom of just sitting there watching your opponent like do all of their stuff for like a really long time, and you just roll saves. To be fair, like that's one of the benefits I think to a game like Age of Sigmar, where it's, well, no, I take that back. Age of Sigmar, you have the alternating, but it's not like I move a unit, then you move a unit, and I move a unit. It's more like every turn initiative could change, which is cool. I like that at least better than the 40K way, where basically we determine initiative at the beginning, and then it's just the same back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Even with an army game, I prefer to do it the other way. We used the bolt action activation system one time in 40K. This was back in like 7th edition, 6th edition. It was a long time ago, but me and a friend were like, let's do it that way. Bolt actions activation system is you have a die for every unit in your army. So let's say I have 7 units in my 40K army. I would have 7 blue dice. And then you have 8 units in your army. So you'd have 8 red dice, whatever, just so they were the same size but different colors. And then we would throw them all into a dice bag. And then you go shake a, and you reach in there and you pull out a die. It's a red die. That's one of mine. So now I get to activate one of my units. Okay, I do some stuff with it. There you go. Boom. Then we go back into the bag. It's a blue one. You get to activate. And so you're not alternating, because you might get to do multiples in a row, but then you know that there's more of your opponent's dice in the game, in the bag at the end, and they'll get to go in a bunch of times in a row because you might use up all your dice. But it's a fog of war situation. The whole concept behind reaching into the bag and pulling out and finding out what you're doing next is that there's explosions and smoke and mud in the air and all this kind of stuff, and you can't see what's going on, and so you're constantly just reacting to the next thing. Whereas like in a game like Rain in Hell, we, instead of just making it alternating action, we made it so at the beginning of every turn, let's say I've got 7 demons in my cabal, you've got 8 demons in your cabal. I'm going to roll 7 D12s, you're going to roll 8 D12s, and then we put them in order. And then you've got a 12 and I don't have a 12. That means you're going to get to move a guy first. And then I've got 2 11s, which means I'm going to get to move 2 guys. And then you've got, neither of us has a 10, but then you've got a 9 and I've got a 9. And because I moved last, you get to move in that. And so it's changing every turn, but you get to look at it at the beginning of each turn and go, oh, okay, I see how this is going to kind of go. And then make your kind of strategery happen based off of that, as opposed to just reacting to like, oh, looks like one of your guys, whoop, you just keep pulling them out of the dice bag. And I love the rules of that because they simulate different types of feels. Like when you're having a fight amongst a bunch of demons and it's all hand-to-hand combat, at any time you can sort of see how the game is shifting. And that's the idea of every turn rolling to see how initiative is going to happen for each side. Whereas, again, in the fog of war, you're reaching into a bag and going, well, I guess we're doing this now. You know what I mean? So I think it's a cool system as opposed to, and in small skirmish games, it's not terrible to just have regular activating, just alternating activations. There's plenty of games that do that. Obviously, what's his name there? Space Weirdos basically does that, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think rules are very important. I know a lot of people love to play games just because they love the lore and they love the models and they don't care about the rules. But to me, rules are important. I can't play a game that's got cool story and cool models but has garbage rules. I just can't do it. And on the other hand, I will also love to play a game that's got very cool rules. And I'm not saying garbage art and garbage story, but if it's model agnostic, then the story and the models are whatever I want. And I dig that. I love being able to make my own lore, make my own models, and then use a good rule system. There are a lot of people out there, I think, that settle for some garbage rules because they really love Tyranids or Space Marines or Orcs or, skeletons or ghosts or whatever. They love those models. They love that story. And they will use some sort of janky rules and be okay with it. And I'm kind of not. So what are the important but boring logistics of making your living as an artist? Well, that's a good question. I would like to know that myself. Let's see here. One of my big pluses for skirmish games is you can take everything you need with you to work and play afterwards. It's harder to commute with a full Age of Sigmar army, and that's also very true. That's for sure. I don't think GW will ever make Epic in that same scale because 3D printing would end up taking too much of their sales. It's possible. The time sink, if I lost, only matters if you care if you lose. I play armies where that is irrelevant, like Squigalanche. That's a fun word to say. Or Skyer Heavy Skaven. Yeah, I mean, that's true too. As long as you had fun, you won, in my opinion. But there are times when just the slog of a 3.5 hour game, and then at the end sometimes even you're sad when you win. After 3.5 hours, you're like, ugh, well, I guess I won. I don't know. Just it's frequently too long. I would prefer to play for the same amount of time, but play far more games in that amount of time than just play one big long game. That's personal preference. Uncle Adam, I would really like to see you and Sam make a battle report for Reign in Hell. Well, that's possible. Vince and I made a battle report for Reign in Hell, which I have started to edit, so I got that going for me, which is nice. I do want to finish it eventually, but last week I was in Reno, and this week I'll be in Schaumburg, Illinois at AdeptiCon. So hopefully eventually soon. Let's see here. Just started playing Bolt Action. It's really fun and written by the legend Rick Priestley. Indeed. That's what I meant by the infinity unit types. Also, the inclusions of alternate move systems. Gotcha, yeah. Starbreach works that way too? Yeah, Starbreach basically uses the same type of activation system that Bolt Action does, where you're reaching into the bag and pulling out the dice. I use my Infinity models in Osprey's Tomorrow's War rule set. I think I have that book someplace. I don't know if they sent it to me or I bought it someplace. I've never read it. I've thumbed through it a bunch, but I've never read it. But I'm pretty sure I have that one. New Horus Heresy rules will include the new reaction mechanic. Apparently, GW is supposedly working on a reboot of Epic as well. Tiny Brush at the ready. Well, there you go. Star Wars Legion needs a skirmish mode. Yes, it does. They released a skirmish mode a couple years back. It was before the pandemic. They're like, hey, we're making a new mode. It's called Skirmish. And I was like, yes, that is exactly what I want. And at the time, I'm thinking Kill Team, but with stormtroopers and whatnot. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, I want Star Wars Kill Team. That's what I want. Now, a lot of people out there are already starting to type, yeah, but what about Imperial Assault or whatever? And I'm like, no, I don't know why, but that doesn't work. It's just, I mean, it's fine. It's a fine game. I've played it once, I think, maybe twice. but that's not what I'm looking for. I'm like literally looking for Kill Team, but with Star Wars dudes, kind of. Oh, previous version of Kill Team, honestly, or something like that. So they come out with these skirmish rules, and I download them, and it's basically just the regular game. It's just instead of 800 points, it's 500 points, and there's been some slight other tweaks, but still, you're moving dudes around in squads. No, I don't want to do that. I really want to have like a couple of Death Troopers, maybe 3 stormtroopers, and like 1 sort of leader guy, and they can all spread out and move around and flank and do all kinds of, as opposed to be like moving in a group, and all that kind of stuff. That's just, I'm more interested in that style of game, and I really wish that they would do something like that. Now, will they? No, probably not. Especially, for instance, they called the first version Skirmish. I don't know what you would call the new version, because the last one's not Skirmish. That's what they called it. So they would have to change the name of that one and then call this Skirmish, or come with a different name. And honestly, I'm dubious about whether or not, I don't know. I'm amazed at what Asmodee has done with taking all the Star Wars stuff, handing over to Atomic Mass. And it's just like, I feel like Atomic Mass is really mostly focused on Marvel and not focused on the Star Wars stuff. And so, I don't know. Legion is drying up a little bit, at least in my local area, which is a bummer. But there you go. Things to ask a painter. Where do you go to get feedback or a critique? That's a good question. I know I get feedback is important for development, sometimes for a piece. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. That's actually a good question. Advertise skirmish rules that they have for the starter boxes is so you're still moving 2 to 3 squads, 15 plus models. Yeah, no, it's just not my jam. Having not played Warcry, how similar is it to Mordheim? Not. It is not similar. Well, no, not really. It's on a same size board as Kill Team, which is 22 by 30. If I remember correctly, Warcry was generally on a 3 by 3. There's not as many pieces of terrain frequently. Excuse me. I mean, and Mordheim was very much like fantasy as far as rules were concerned. Kind of like the original Kill Team 2018 was very much like 40K as far as rules were concerned. Warcry is very different from Age of Sigmar as far as rules. So, yeah. But you still get to use small little warbands of cool Age of Sigmar models, or the regular models that they make for Warcry, but you can do either. And then you get to use them and hit dudes and shoot dudes and run around and jump off of stuff, and it's a lot of fun, actually. If you had fun, you won. Sounds like a new Tabletop Minions shirt. Yeah, I just haven't designed it yet, but it's in my list of potential shirts. Have you tried Two Thin Coats? I have not. I saw it for the first time in person at Reno, actually, this last week. It was in the Asmodee booth. They had a rack of the paints. The nipples are weird. Let me back that word up. Nozzles. The nozzles are weird. Nipples is not the right word. Nozzles. So, like, in a normal, dropper bottle type paint, if we were to zoom way in just on the nozzles have straight sides, and then they're rounded at the top, and there's a hole in it, right? And then you unscrew the thing, and you go blorp onto your wet palette or whatever, you screw it back on, and you're good. These Duncan Rhodes paints, the nozzles are not straight-sided that are round at the top. They are coned like this, which also means the cap is also coned like that. So you have this kind of like, it's like this, and then there's like the hole, so which is real weird, at least in my opinion. It seems like, because I think that there's agitators in the bottles as well, I would think that the agitators would have a tendency to get stuck in there a little bit more, although that's probably the same with, honestly, anything. But the biggest issue was, and this is, I think, Brent and Casey mentioned this, was that as they were using those paints, Goobertown Brent and Casey from eBay Miniature Rescue, they were both at the Reno trade show as well, and they were sitting there in the Asmodee booth, because there was like a little area where like store owners could come and try out the paints and all that kind of stuff. Well, no one was using it on Thursday, so they just sat there and painted for like 2 hours. But they said that they were finding that sometimes the paint would kind of run down that sort of sloped edges to the coned nozzle and then get on the rim, and then it would get on the cap, and it's just, they were like, I'm not sure about these bottles. But otherwise, they seem to like the paint, so that's, pretty cool. Looking forward to AdeptiCon this week? Me too. All the company changes with Asmodee and Fantasy Flight makes me nervous to invest in Star Wars Legion. Yeah, I can understand that. I can understand that. Let's see here. What about the Wizards of the Coast Star Wars game? Oh, I was big into that back in the day. The pre-paints, yeah, I've still got like a duffel bag in the basement full of models. Warcry was my entrance to the hobby, and it's a very good skirmish game. I think so. I'm looking for more RPG options in the campaign. Shall I try Frostgrave or Mordheim? I'd tell you to try Frostgrave because Mordheim is, well, it's not in production and hasn't been for a long time. I'd tell you to try Frostgrave. Frostgrave, if you're looking for more RPG type stuff to do with your army, I would say Frostgrave's the way to go. Hey, Uncle Adam just had a thought. Just play Combat Patrol in 40k. It's about the same light gameplay as Kill Team, if that's the idea. The thing is that in you're still moving guys in squads in Combat Patrol, and I don't like moving guys in squads. So yeah, that's the thing I'm trying to get away from, actually. If GW keeps reinventing and screwing up their small games, will you just start playing small indie games? I mean, I'm already kind of doing that right now. I'm only playing Warcry from them at this point. I mean, I know it is detrimental to the channel for me to stop playing Games Workshop stuff. I get that, but you know, because if I'm not talking about, you know, the biggest game company in our entire, you know, niche, tabletop wargaming, if I'm not really talking about their products all the time and stuff like that, then you know, you don't get as many eyeballs. But I don't know. I kind of prefer these other games, and I think that there's probably a lot of other people out there too that don't realize that they may also prefer them as well. Obviously, there are plenty of folks out there who are super invested in the lore and the models and all that kind of stuff. Honestly, you can also steal all that stuff. You can totally play Space Weirdos and have your Tau up against some Crimson Fists, and, you know, it's totally fine. And you still get to use the lore, you still get to use the models. You just only paid $5 for the miniatures, and you got probably a better, or not the miniatures, but for the rule set, and you probably very possibly got a better rule set. So, yeah, I think that's the thing people don't seem to understand as much. I mean, one-page rules is pushing that. Like, they're riding the line on pushing that. When you look at the one-page rules stuff, specifically like the Grimdark stuff, which is basically kind of their version of 40K, the artwork that they publish in that book, it rides a real line of getting them in trouble, because you're like, well, that's obviously a Tau or a Tyranid or a Space Marine. You know what I mean? Like, you've modified it a little bit, but there things could be said, and I don't want to do that personally. So that's why we don't make rules like that, or you know, make artwork like that. We didn't use any Games Workshop oriented models in our book, you know, for any of those photos and stuff like that. And we won't for any of our books, because I know we would get in trouble for doing so. We actually asked. We reached out to them. We're like, hey, can we use some pictures of the stuff? And then they sent us a PDF that told us all the things we couldn't do, and that was one of them. So we're like, all right, cool. So yeah, but if you want to play, you know, or even make battle reports, you know, like the battle report that Vince and I did, that's got GW models in it, but that's a battle report. It seems to be different than, you know, publishing it in your book. So anyway, long story short is use the models you like, use the lore you like, and then just find a rule system that you like and go from there. Legion is definitely on the rise in my local community. Well, that's good. And Atomic Mass is definitely still actively supporting it. Battle Force boxes and Scum are incoming. You, Scum. Like, I'm just telling you what I see in my local area, but the thing that's so interesting about tabletop wargaming is that you can go to a new city for some reason, you're traveling or you move there or whatever, and find people are playing this game, and this is the game in this local area, and you're like, nobody plays it where I came from. And I wish there was a way, and we were kind of kicking that idea around a little bit with the Game 4 app, and we may be able to bring that back, this specific feature to the Game 4 app when we relaunch it. But we would love to have like more of a heat map kind of situation where you could see, let's say, a map of the United States and see which games are getting played more frequently where. You know what I mean? Not just for miniatures, but also for board games and RPGs and all that kind of stuff. That would be very interesting, I think, to be able to kind of track, sort of. Again, not track like with a privacy, you know, something against your privacy, but more just like there's a bunch of games that are being posted in here, and they are all for this particular game, and so therefore we can say that this game is popular in this region as opposed to being in this region where nobody ever seems to post that game, that kind of stuff. Loved Mordheim. Warcry is really fun, but it's its own game. Yeah, definitely. Honestly, if you're interested in Mordheim, I'd tell you to look into Frostgrave. I would say that Mordheim has got a lot more in common with Frostgrave than, Frostgrave's got a lot more in common with Mordheim than Warcry has in common with Mordheim, in my opinion. You've gotten me to be looking into more indie games only using GW for models. Nice. I've played loads of other rule sets using GW miniatures and lore. Yeah, absolutely. I really dislike the habit of making things that are totally not GW stuff. I want new and unique models and aren't. Yeah, no, I know what you mean too. Like, that's the thing. Like, I understand from a business aspect, if you make your game very obvious, hey, you have a bunch of Games Workshop models. You could use our rule set, and then we have a bunch of army lists already put together for your Games Workshop models. You won't have to do anything. You'll just be like, hey, take these Tau. These Tau are now called something else, and then therefore, boom, you just drop them in there. We've got everything you need, and I get that. I am a fan of just being like, we're just gonna just make our own thing, and and I understand that obviously does not sell as well, but again, it's I'm a bad capitalist, so it's okay. Is there a Space Weirdos but in a fantasy setting? From what I understand, and this is from reading the comments on the why I like it video, someone asked that same question in the video, and a YouTube user named Casey G, which I'm assuming is Casey Garsky, who wrote Space Weirdos, mentioned that Sword Weirdos is just about done or will be releasing soon. So there will be a fantasy version of Space Weirdos coming soon, according to the comment section. Now, that could be somebody who created an account that sounded like Casey, or whatever, but it seems unlikely. It seems like a lot of work. So probably. I have not asked Casey, and unfortunately, he's not going to be at AdeptiCon, but I should shoot him a message, actually, and find out. But yeah, that's the plan, is that he's working on Sword Weirdos, which is going to basically be a fantasy version of that. So that's pretty cool. Just picked up Space Weirdos and Brutality because I have several Reaper and GW models that I've never used, but I want to put them out into Outer Skirmish games. See, that's the thing that's cool too, is that sometimes, like, even companies like GW will make a model that you're like, this is a super cool model, but it is hot garbage in the game. It is terrible. Its stats are bad. I can't figure out how to use it, whatever the deal is. But you're like, but I could throw him into this game and then he could be whatever stats I want, and that's really cool. That's the thing that I like about tabletop wargaming. I got brought back to what was going on with GW in about 2016, and something had changed for the better. Now it seems like things have changed back, and the goodwill is now lost. 8th edition really turned them around, because 7th edition 40K. So it started, in my opinion, with Age of Sigmar. Age of Sigmar was a huge band-aid to rip off. Getting rid of, like, doing the end times, getting rid of the old world and all that stuff, blowing it all up, and then coming out with Age of Sigmar. Obviously, there was a lot of gnashing of teeth and rending of garments and burning your army in the driveway and putting it on YouTube. But yeah, so there was some of that, but there was also a lot of other people who were like, oh, good, I can play this game the way that I want to now, or whatever the deal was. So there was flux, but it started to obviously go in a good direction, and Age of Sigmar has been doing great. At that time, I believe 7th edition was also the thing out there for 40K, and 7th edition was at that time just really circling the drain. Like, it wasn't like they were going to go out of business, but it was just like, it was really losing people. I knew a lot of people that had quit playing 40K. And when 8th edition came out, I know a lot of people that came back to it, tons. And it was as if they could do no wrong, and everything was great and awesome and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I would say since the launch of 9th, well, not right away at the launch of 9th, but a little after the launch of 9th, it just, yeah, it does seem like they're losing, goodwill again, obviously. And the fact that the new version of 40K 10th edition is probably, and again, I'll probably take a bet that I'm right, it's not coming out this summer, but it's coming out next summer. So yeah, 10th edition, it'll be 3 years because it came out in 2020. 2023 is already just around the corner. So not this summer, but next summer, new version of 40K. Again, I hope I am wrong, but I don't think I am. Also this summer, new version of Warcry, unfortunately, probably. Again, hope I'm wrong. Probably not. So I think that 3-year thing, and that's like the last Every Other Sunday show, I was like, what about a 5-year cycle? And I thought that would be a good idea. They have not released a press release saying that I am right. So that's on them. I don't know what to tell you about that. Let's see here. I like the fact that Tabletop Minions doesn't go on about GW all the time. The hobby is so much bigger than just one company. It is. It totally is. And don't get me wrong. I mean, I like a lot of models. I use GW stuff for kit bashing so frequently. Sometimes not even kit bashing. I'm just like, these guys are great, but I'm going to use them for a different game or whatever. And I used to play a decent amount of 40K and Age of Sigmar. I obviously played a bunch of Warcry until they changed it. And I still love my Age of Sigmar models and all these different warbands I keep making for Warcry. I mean, I've got 7, 8 painted warbands, I think, for like fully painted warbands for Warcry. But my concern is that they're going to change it very soon, and in this summer, and maybe not change it for the better. I mean, here's hoping maybe they will, but I don't know. We will see. I'm torn between trying new indie games and helping my local store still keep the register ringing. Well, you can still buy your models and stuff from your local store. You know what I mean? Like, that's the thing. I understand that the indie games very frequently don't show up at your stores. You're getting them online in some fashion because just that's the distribution model that works best for indie games at this point. It used to be indie games had like no distribution model. You were lucky if you found one like at a convention or something like that. Now you've got One Page Rules doing their own thing. You've got lots of different companies like that. You've got Wargame Vault, where there's tons and tons of different games on there. And you've got just global access to that stuff, which is very cool. But like, I can see that especially from a 3D printing miniatures thing. Like, there are plenty of folks out there who are like, well, now that I can 3D print miniatures, I don't ever need to go to the store anymore. Well, you're probably still going to need paint because you can't 3D print paint yet that I know of. I mean, a little. Well, okay, yeah. Hero Forge sort of does that through there, but you can't do it at home. Let's just say that. But yeah, it's just one of those things where, yeah, I want to keep supporting the stores, but I also don't want to keep supporting a rule set that I don't like. So I'll very probably still be buying models and tools and paint and brushes and things in a lot of situations from my local store. I still go to my local store quite frequently, but I'm not going in there to buy the next codex or the next codex after that, or the codex that comes out 12 minutes after that one. You know what I mean? So that's, it's up to you though. Does that actually make you a good capitalist, morally? Well, that's the difference, isn't it? Yeah, no. Good capitalist has very little to do with morals, I think. Anyone heard of Archive X Paints? Artist Opus just put up a demo of a few colors in a range yesterday. I have not heard of it. No, that's interesting. GW could learn a lot from the open gaming license like Wizards of the Coast has used over the years. Oh, I don't think they'll ever do that. They could. I mean, they could definitely learn some stuff for sure, but I don't think they'll ever do anything open gaming license at all. New. Sword Weirdos could be interesting. I picked up Space Weirdos recently. As the result of mentions here, I have at least 2 Stargrave bands to work with. See? There you go. Boom. Ready to go. Let's see here. I know a lot of other old heads that tried to get back into 40K with 8th, but it got bloated and they got all the old heads back, sick of the constant buy-in pretty quickly. Yeah, like 8th had some great stuff right off the bat, and everybody was like, hey, you've sort of streamlined some things, you made some things work, and this is great, and blah, blah, and then it just kind of started going back to the bloat. Yeah, I don't disagree. It was actually the Free Slaughter Priest model with the September 2016 issue of White Dwarf that started me on the road that led me here. Wow. Nice. Let's see here. Did 8th edition 40K have issues that caused GW to bring out 9th? It wasn't making enough money. You gotta have to constantly. They've been since 7th, I think. They've basically been on a 3-year cycle. So they everything comes out now every 3 years. So 40K went from 8th edition 2017 to, or sorry, 2017 8th edition, 9th edition came out 2020, 10th edition will come out in 2023. Age of Sigmar every 3 years. Now it seems Kill Team every 3 years. I have a suspicion that Warcry will be every 3 years, which means the new version will come out this summer because it came out in 2019 originally. And so they seem to be on a 3-year cycle, which most people find too soon. Because I've got friends who are like, I almost got my army painted and they changed editions. And then now I have to not start over from scratch, but it tweaked a bunch of things and it's made me annoyed. And that just, it multiplied times infinity. Is there an independent game that could be a good skirmish rule set for Legion? I mean, I think Space Weirdos could do that. You could do that with Stargrave to some degree. Star Breach from Slow Death Games actually has rules in it for they're one of those companies where they make an army list that you read it for a bit and you're like, oh, that's Imperial Guard, or oh, that's Adeptus Mechanicus, or oh, that's Chaos, or whatever. So they're making it so that if you've already got GW models, they're like, hey, you could use these army lists and you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Great. But it's still a small skirmish game. It's not an army game. But they don't just do 40K. They also have 2 lists in there too that are obviously good guy Star Wars dudes and bad guy Star Wars dudes. But then they also have a couple of army lists in there that are just space pirates or nomads or just rando stuff that's not affiliated with any other company. They give you lots of options in Star Breach. It's from Slow Death Games. I would check them out if you're interested in that kind of thing. How do you feel about Scale 75 paints? I've never used them. They're not, I can't access them anywhere around here. I know I've seen them at shows. I take that back. I've seen them at conventions, but I've never, there's no stores that handle them around here, so I've never really used them. Let's see. These Snarling Badgers are coming along, by the way, black and red tabletop minions colors. Nice. New mic. Yeah, I've got a beacon mic, which I've been using now for several episodes here, and it works nice. And it also lights up when I talk. That's fun too. I'm not a pro, but I drink coffee or some kind of lemon lime soda when I'm painting. Well, there you go. As much as I hate the Codex situation at GW, the new Eldari one is gold. It would be nice to get 2 years out of it, though. Well, yeah, I suppose. Maybe. I've never bought anything directly related to 40K. I just can't. I've encountered too much of a toxic community surrounding 40K, specifically transphobes, homophobes, etc. I just can't go there. I mean, that's certainly a choice, and I don't disagree with you in many of those things. I've found, so I don't think the company is backing that stuff up. I don't think that GW is all yeah, we don't, we're all about transphobia or homophobia. The community has definitely some aspects of that. Some folks here and there, certainly. That being said, the thing that's great about tabletop gaming, which I keep harping on, is that you can always pick whatever you want, mix things together, match things, whatever, all that kind of stuff, and make the game that you want, or the type of experience that you want, play with the people you want, that kind of stuff. And so that's very cool. I mean, when you are playing video games, admittedly, you can just play with your friends, certainly. But if you play the wider kind of just, you're playing with pubbies and whatnot and things like that, you're going to very possibly run into some, people that you're not necessarily interested in hanging around with, which is the same possibly going to tournaments or things like that, or even the game store sometimes. So it's kind of, video games have got that thing as well, certainly, but tabletop games, again, you can play with your friends, maybe even a little bit more easily sometimes. I don't know, it depends. I guess video games can be a bit easier too, because you just sit down and hop online with your friend and play, a co-op game or something like that. But yeah, I think it's smart to try to tailor the overall gaming, your gaming experience to the way you like to do it. There's a channel that I watch on YouTube about whiskey, and they say the best whiskey is the whiskey that you like to drink the way you like to drink it. And that is to basically try to head off the concept of oh, no. You don't drink whiskey with ice. That's not done. You only drink it neat and stuff like that. Well, what if I like it with ice? You know what I mean? What if I like it with I like to drink bourbon with Coke Zero. it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It's what I enjoy, and the best whiskey is the whiskey that you like to drink the way you like to drink it, and the best gaming experience is the game that you like to play the way you like to play it, I guess, is, off the top of my head. Recently had to strip a large number of Battletech miniatures, and your suggestion of LA is totally awesome. Cleaner worked wonderfully. 24 hours in the soak, the paint fell right off. That stuff is great and cheap. I agree. It's pretty cool. Let me see here. Whiskey Tribe, indeed. Yep. I lost track on how to play 40K during the lockdown. My group moved on to other games to save the hassle. The added variety has been fun. Yeah, I mean, variety is the spice of life. That's the thing that people say all the time, and they're not wrong. Let's see here. I have the same issue with Scale and Monument West Coast. No retailers at all and way too much to ship. I mean, yeah, that's sort of the issue sometimes working with small companies is that especially if you live overseas, it becomes incredibly difficult. I know Monument specifically has started working, getting their stuff distributed in Canada and UK. And they're working on Australia, but it's taken some time. So yeah, actually I'll be talking to Jason this upcoming week at AdeptiCon. So it is 11 o'clock, folks. I want to let you folks know that I appreciate the questions that you've asked, that I'm going to try to go through and try to figure out which ones will be best to ask some pro painters at AdeptiCon and make a new fun video asking all kinds of questions of different pro painters. And then we'll go from there. So, if you're going to be at AdeptiCon, I hope to see you there, specifically Friday night up in the free gaming area, up on the second floor in the kind of the hotel-y, well, not the hotel, but the conference room or whatever, the convention center area. There's a free gaming that goes on up on the second floor at night usually, and we're going to hope to be up there on Friday night. I will post more about it on Twitter and such, maybe even Instagram and all that stuff, Facebook, I don't know. But I'll post more about it soon so that you folks can, if you're going to be there, can kind of come up and hang out and maybe get a demo or watch a demo or just hang out and be cool. Vince will be there. I'll be there. Maybe Sam will be there. Other folks, who's to say? So thanks again for coming by, and we'll see you in 2 weeks where I'll have news about AdeptiCon and all kinds of other stuff and whatnot. And yeah, everybody stay safe. We'll see you again soon, and thanks for watching.